Beneath the dark waters of Lake Nasser lies a secret that was never meant to be found, a perfectly preserved chamber sealed for over 3,000 years. When archaeologists break the ancient seal, they discover something impossible, a manuscript that predicts historical events with chilling accuracy, written millennia before they occurred. As Dr. Ilyas Murad translates the mysterious text, he uncovers predictions of Rome's fall, Alexandria's burning, and modern catastrophes, including one scheduled to occur just weeks from now. But the manuscript carries a darker truth. Everyone who has previously discovered it has either disappeared, died, or descended into madness. And now shadowy government forces will stop at nothing to control this knowledge. What force could possibly send such precise information backward through time? Why was the manuscript's author buried alive with his creation? And most terrifying of all, what if these aren't predictions, but instructions that create our future once they're read? The metallic thud from below the surface of Lake Nasser shattered the morning stillness. Dr. Ilyas Murad flinched at the sound, his knuckles whitening around the boat's railing. 30 meters beneath their floating research platform, divers had just breached a sealed chamber that, according to all archaeological records, shouldn't exist. "They're in," whispered Sarah, the team's stratigraphic specialist, her voice tense as she monitored the communication system. The sun beat down mercilessly on the expedition team, but Ilyas felt a chill spread through his body. 3 weeks of surveying the submerged ruins near Abu Simbel had yielded nothing but fragments of common pottery and architectural remnants, until yesterday's sonar anomaly. A perfect rectangular void within the bedrock, untouched by the rising waters that had claimed the lower Nubian Valley when the Aswan Dam was constructed in the 1960s. Through the headphones, Ilyas could hear Martin's labored breathing. The lead diver's usual steady rhythm now came in irregular bursts. "Doctor Murad, you need to see this." Martin's voice crackled through the speaker. "The chamber is pristine, completely dry inside. The seal was perfect." Impossible. The waters had risen over 60 years ago. Nothing should be dry. "The hieroglyphs," Martin continued, his voice dropping to a whisper that forced everyone on the boat to lean closer to the speakers. "They look like they were carved yesterday. The pigments are still vibrant, and there's something in the center, a vessel of some kind, sealed with black resin." Ilyas exchanged glances with the Egyptian antiquities representative, who had been assigned to monitor their expedition, a man who had maintained professional detachment until now. For the first time, Ilyas saw alarm in his eyes. "Do not touch anything else," Ilyas instructed firmly. "We're sending down the imaging equipment." The second diving team entered the water with specialized cameras and lighting. The video feed flickered to life on the monitors, revealing what no human eyes had seen for millennia. The chamber walls gleamed with hieroglyphs painted in gold and lapis lazuli, depicting scenes not of gods or pharaonic triumphs, but of astronomical events, star alignments, solar phenomena, and lunar cycles rendered with unsettling precision. The ceiling was a perfect map of the night sky, but the constellations were wrong. Subtly, unnervingly wrong, as if depicting a sky from another time. In the center stood a simple stone pedestal, holding a black jar, its surface covered in hardened resin with a seal bearing symbols that matched no known dynastic cartouche. The seal wasn't decorative or ceremonial, it was functional, designed to keep something contained. "The chamber architecture suggests early 19th dynasty, whispered Dr. Hawass, the antiquities representative. "But these symbols—" His voice trailed off. The jar was carefully extracted and brought to the surface in a specialized container. The archaeological protocol demanded they wait for proper laboratory conditions, but Ilyas could feel the weight of discovery and the unspoken pressure from the government officials who had suddenly taken interest in their previously underfunded expedition. By sunset, the team had established a temporary clean room within their main tent on the eastern shore. The jar sat on a sterile table under bright lights that revealed fine details in the resin seal, not random patterns but microscopic inscriptions spiraling inward. "If we break the seal incorrectly, we risk damaging the contents," Sarah warned, adjusting her gloves. "If there are contents," corrected Elias. It could be symbolic. The dry air crackled with tension as specialized tools were prepared. The thermal imaging had already revealed something solid inside, layered objects carefully placed. When the seal finally broke, the sound was unexpectedly loud, a crisp crack that made everyone step back instinctively. A sweet, unfamiliar scent filled the tent, not the musty decay they'd expected, but something chemical and preserved. Inside lay rolls of papyrus, impossibly intact, wrapped around a core of what appeared to be thin sheets of hammered gold. The outer layer of papyrus unfurled slightly of its own accord, revealing text written in a steady, deliberate hand. Elias leaned forward, translating the first line aloud without thinking. "And empires shall fall in the year when the sun bleeds over the towers of fire." The words hung in the air. No one moved. That's not standard hieratic script," Dr. Hawass said, his voice strained. "The syntax is wrong for ancient Egyptian. It reads almost like a historical account," Elias finished, "of events that hadn't happened yet." Carefully, he unrolled more of the papyrus. The text continued with descriptions of events that seemed to reference the fall of Rome, the burning of Alexandria's library, the coming of foreign armies with weapons of impossible power. Each prediction was preceded by astronomical alignments, specific, calculable positions of stars and planets. "This is a hoax," declared one of the junior archaeologists. "It has to be. Someone created this recently and planted it." But the carbon dating equipment had already provided preliminary results. The papyrus was, impossibly, over 3,000 years old. The dripping of water from the diving equipment echoed through the tent like a metronome counting down to something no one wanted to acknowledge. Elias felt the papyrus tremble in his hands, or perhaps it was his own fingers that shook. The next section of text described events that matched known historical catastrophes with disturbing accuracy. Plagues, earthquakes, the rise and fall of civilizations that wouldn't exist until centuries after the text was written. And then, in the final visible section, before the scroll curved back into its roll, were descriptions of events that had not yet come to pass. Elias carefully set the papyrus down, feeling the weight of every eye in the tent upon him. The government official stepped forward, his face now a mask of rigid control. "This discovery is now classified," he announced flatly. "No communications leave this site. All notes, photographs, and recordings are to be surrendered immediately." In the sudden silence that followed, Elias realized that their discovery wasn't just an archaeological breakthrough, it was a potential weapon. Knowledge that could destabilize governments, religions, markets. The manuscript didn't just predict the future, it threatened to change it. As the official began collecting phones and cameras, Elias noticed a final line of text on the exposed papyrus, different from the rest, a personal note from the ancient scribe. "I have seen too much. The burden now passes to you." The papyrus seemed to pulse in the artificial light, not as a dead artifact, but as something alive, a parasite of knowledge, waiting for new minds to infect. And Elias knew with sudden, terrible clarity that they should have left it in darkness beneath the waters. 3 days after the discovery, Cairo's early morning light filtered through the blinds of the museum's secure laboratory. Elias hadn't slept properly since they'd left Lake Nasser. The papyrus fragments lay meticulously arranged under specialized glass cases, each connected to climate control systems that maintained perfect preservation conditions. "The results are back, Doctor," Nasrin Kader announced, placing a folder on the steel table. The conservation specialist's voice betrayed the strain of working under government scrutiny. Armed guards stood at every entrance, and security cameras tracked their movements. Elias opened the folder with unsteady hands. The carbon dating was unequivocal. The papyrus dated to approximately 1250 BCE, early Ramses II era. The ink analysis confirmed materials consistent with that period. The paper composition matched known samples from royal archives. "It's authentic," he whispered. "Scientifically, yes," Nasrin replied carefully, "but logically." Their conversation fell silent as Dr. Hassan, the government's archaeological liaison, entered the room. The man's presence had become a constant shadow over their work. "The ministry requires your preliminary translation by tomorrow," Hassan stated flatly, his eyes never meeting Elias's. "They're particularly interested in the sections referencing future events. Translation takes time," Elias protested. "The dialect has unusual characteristics. Time is precisely what concerns them, Dr. Murad." After Hassan left, the team huddled closer, speaking in hushed tones despite knowing the room was likely monitored. "There are only two possibilities," Sarah argued. "Either this is the most elaborate archaeological forgery ever created, or we're looking at something that fundamentally changes our understanding of history," Elias finished. The team had fractured into factions. Some believed the manuscript must be a complex fraud, perhaps planted decades ago during the Aswan Dam construction. Others suspected a previously unknown form of historical record-keeping that only appeared to predict events. A smaller group, including Elias, faced the irrational possibility that they were dealing with genuine foreknowledge. That night, working alone, Elias deciphered a new section. The papyrus described a great burning in the Northern Empire's heart, followed by dates and astronomical alignments that, when converted to the modern calendar, corresponded precisely to the Great Fire of Rome in 64 CE, an event occurring over 1,000 years after the papyrus was created. His hands trembled as he transcribed another passage. "When the twin pillars fall in the western land, the eagle will spread war across the desert sands." The manuscript didn't just predict ancient events, it described modern ones with the same detached precision. Sleep-deprived and increasingly isolated, Elias began experiencing vivid dreams, narrow corridors stretching endlessly before him, walls covered in hieroglyphs that shifted when he tried to read them. He would wake gasping, convinced someone had been standing over him. In the laboratory the next morning, Elias noticed something odd. Certain symbols in the text appeared to change subtly when viewed under different light spectrums. Using ultraviolet imaging, he discovered a secondary text layer, visible only under specific conditions. "Look at this," he called to Sarah, pointing to the screen. "The manuscript isn't just one text, it's multiple texts, written in layers." Before Sarah could respond, alarms blared throughout the building. Security personnel rushed into the laboratory. "There's been a breach," one guard announced. "Someone attempted to access the secure storage area." As they evacuated the room, Elias glanced back at the papyrus fragments. For a moment he could have sworn he saw the ink move, like liquid shifting beneath the surface of the ancient paper, a hallucination born of exhaustion and obsession. Outside the museum, reporters had gathered, somehow alerted to the discovery despite the security protocols. The government's silence had created a vacuum filled with speculation. Theories ranged from ancient atomic knowledge to evidence of time travelers. That evening, Elias received an unmarked envelope in his hotel room. Inside was a photograph of a wall carving from another submerged site near Abu Simbel, taken decades earlier. The image showed the same distinctive script as their papyrus, with a hastily scrawled note. "You're not the first to find it. They've known since 1965. The question was no longer just what the manuscript predicted, but who had been keeping it secret, and why. A week later, Elias stood on the deck of a research vessel, watching Lake Nasser's dark waters lap against the hull. The expedition had been hastily reassembled under the pretense of further documentation, but the military presence made the true purpose clear. Someone wanted whatever else remained submerged. "The dive team is ready, Dr. Murad," announced Captain Khalil, his uniform crisp despite the desert heat. Four armed soldiers monitored the archaeologists as they prepared equipment. The anonymous photograph had triggered a cascade of classified orders, pulling resources from across Egyptian government agencies. Sarah approached, keeping her voice low. "This isn't normal protocol. There are intelligence officers among the dive team." "They're looking for something specific," Elias replied, watching a technician calibrate sonar equipment that exceeded standard archaeological requirements. "Something they think we missed." The divers disappeared beneath the surface at precisely 800 hours. Elias monitored the underwater cameras, focusing on the sealed chamber they'd discovered previously. The images revealed what they already knew, but the divers bypassed it entirely, heading deeper into the submerged ruins. "There's a secondary structure," came the transmission from below. Hidden behind the first chamber, signs of forced entry, old damage to the stone. The camera feed showed a narrow passage carved through solid bedrock, leading to a larger space. Unlike the pristine condition of the first chamber, this one showed clear signs of catastrophic flooding. Sediment covered the floor, and fragments of what appeared to be wooden furniture had rotted into unidentifiable shapes. But the walls remained, and upon them, inscriptions unlike those in the first chamber. These weren't careful records or astronomical charts, but frantic, irregular carvings. Some areas showed the same text repeated dozens of times, like a punishment or desperate mantra. "Sir," called one of the dive team, his voice tight, "you need to see this corner section." The camera panned to reveal human remains partially embedded in silt, skeletons, at least 6, positioned in unnatural poses against the far wall. Their hands were bound behind their backs. "They were trapped inside when it was sealed," Sarah whispered, the implications settling like a weight. As the divers cleared sediment from the floor, they uncovered stone tools scattered among the remains. Not ceremonial objects, but crude implements. Scratch marks covered the sealed doorway, evidence of desperate attempts to escape. This wasn't a tomb, Elias realized. It was a prison. Captain Khalil stepped forward, suddenly interested. What were they imprisoned for? Before Elias could respond, one of the divers called out. They'd discovered a small intact chest, wedged beneath a fallen stone block. Unlike everything else in the chamber, it appeared deliberately protected, placed where flooding would least affect it. When brought to the surface, the chest revealed additional papyrus fragments, smaller, rougher than those found previously, and on them, a different handwriting altogether. Elias translated the first legible section. "We who carved the knowledge are now sealed with it." Our crime was seeing too clearly. As daylight faded, the military established a perimeter around their camp. Satellite communications linked them directly to Cairo, where officials waited for updates. Elias noticed one of the soldiers photographing each fragment before it was catalogued, sending the images through a separate secure channel. Working by lamplight, Elias assembled the fragments into a coherent narrative. The text described workers involved in constructing what they called the warning chamber, the same space where they'd found the original papyrus. According to their account, they had been ordered to carve specific texts dictated by priests, astronomical calculations beyond their understanding. The men speak of construction at Abu Simbel during the 1960s, Captain Khalil interrupted, reviewing a file marked classified. Engineers reported unusual findings during the temple relocation project, anomalies in the bedrock that didn't match known structures. Those reports were suppressed, Sarah added, her expression hardening. Someone knew about these chambers before us. The question is what they did with that knowledge, Elias replied. The final fragment translated that night contained the most disturbing revelation. The priests said our deaths would seal the power of the warning. We are not the first to die for these words, nor shall we be the last. In that moment, Elias caught Captain Khalil watching him with an expression that wasn't simply professional interest, but calculation, as if measuring how much of a problem Elias might become. The Egyptian Museum in Cairo had transformed into a fortress. Additional security checkpoints blocked each corridor, and researchers required multiple clearances to access the conservation laboratory. 2 weeks after the Lake Nasser expedition, Elias found himself working under increasingly restrictive conditions. They've limited our access to the original fragments, Sarah informed him, sliding a security badge across the table. Her voice was steady, but her eyes darted toward the surveillance cameras. Only 4 hours per day now. Elias nodded, examining the high-resolution photographs spread across his workstation. The government had confiscated the physical papyri, claiming specialized storage requirements, but permitted their team to continue translations from digital copies. I've been analyzing the marginalia, he said, gesturing to nearly invisible markings along the edges of the text. There's a pattern I missed initially. Under ultraviolet light, the markings resolved into a sequence of minute symbols, not hieroglyphs, but what appeared to be numerical notations. When plotted on a map, they formed coordinates pointing to a location in Egypt's western desert, the Siwa Oasis. Why would an ancient scribe include coordinates to Siwa? Sarah asked, leaning closer. Siwa was home to the Oracle of Amun, Elias explained. Alexander the Great traveled there in 331 BCE to consult the oracle. But these writings predate Alexander by nearly a millennium. The implications hung unspoken between them. The manuscript wasn't just predicting events, it was providing directions. Later that evening, in his apartment overlooking the Nile, Elias received an unexpected visitor. Dr. Hassan arrived unannounced, his typical bureaucratic demeanor replaced by unusual urgency. "You've discovered the Siwa connection," Hassan stated, declining to sit. It wasn't a question. "How did you—" "Because others found it before you. In 1932, a German expedition discovered similar fragments at a different site. They followed the coordinates to Siwa." Hassan removed a faded photograph from his jacket. "This was their team. Note how many are crossed out." The image showed 11 archaeologists posed before a desert camp. 7 faces were marked with red X's. "What happened to them?" Elias asked, a chill spreading through him despite the warm night. "Officially, various accidents, heat stroke, mechanical failures, one apparent suicide." Hassan reclaimed the photograph. "The survivors abandoned their research. Their notes were confiscated by Egyptian authorities." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because history is repeating itself. Your team isn't the first to be manipulated into following this path." Hassan moved toward the door. "There's a faction within the government that has been tracking these manuscripts for decades. They believe the predictions can be weaponized." After Hassan left, Elias sat in darkness, weighing impossible choices. The academic in him demanded pursuing the truth. The human in him recognized the growing danger. By morning, he'd made his decision. Without informing the authorities, Elias and Sarah assembled a minimal team, just themselves and Martin, the lead diver from the original expedition. They requisitioned a single jeep, claiming a routine visit to a separate archaeological site. The journey to Siwa took them across merciless desert landscape. The oasis appeared on the horizon like a mirage, a splash of green amid endless sand. Ancient ruins scattered the area, remnants of temples, fortifications, and settlements spanning thousands of years. "We should focus on the oldest structures," Elias directed as they established a makeshift base. "Look for the same architectural signatures we found at Abu Simbel." By sunset, they had located their target. A partially collapsed structure on the eastern edge of the oasis, its entrance almost completely buried by drifting sand. The stones matched the unusual composition found in the submerged chambers. As they prepared excavation equipment, Elias noticed fresh tire tracks leading to and from the site. Someone had been there recently, perhaps within days. "We're not alone in this," he told the others, tension evident in his voice. "Whatever we find here, someone else may have already accessed it." Inside the buried structure, their flashlights revealed walls covered with inscriptions similar to those from Lake Nasser. But these appeared incomplete. Texts begun with meticulous care, then abandoned mid-sentence as if the writer had been interrupted. In the center chamber, they found unmistakable evidence of recent activity. Modern excavation tools, discarded water bottles, and a digital camera that had been deliberately smashed. "Someone doesn't want a record of what's here," Sarah whispered, examining the destroyed equipment. On the far wall, a section of text stood out, not for its content, but for how it had been carved. The hieroglyphs were crude, desperate, cut into stone with improper tools. Elias translated aloud, "The knowledge consumes. The text must never be read completely. Those who see all will be blinded by what they cannot unsee." Martin's flashlight beam settled on something else, a modern inscription carved beside the ancient warning. Fresh cuts in the stone in English. 1965-2025, the cycle continues. The deeper chambers beneath Siwa yielded the most disturbing discovery yet. Elias worked methodically through the night, removing centuries of sand from a sealed compartment, while Sarah documented each finding. Martin kept watch outside, increasingly paranoid about potential followers. "I've breached the inner wall," Elias announced, his headlamp illuminating a narrow gap. The stone had been sealed with a primitive mortar, deliberately concealing whatever lay beyond. As the final section crumbled away, the stale air carried the unmistakable scent of charred papyrus. Inside the hidden alcove, they found remnants of scrolls, deliberately burned, with only fragments surviving the destruction. "Someone tried to erase this knowledge," Sarah whispered, carefully extracting a partially intact piece with gloved hands. Under portable UV lighting, the carbonized papyrus revealed text similar to the Lake Nasser manuscripts. Elias translated the first legible section. "The names of those to come: Philip of Macedon, his son who will be called Great, the Queen with the Serpent, the Caesars 5. He stopped abruptly, his hand trembling. These are historical figures who lived centuries after this text was written. The Ptolemaic rulers, the early Roman emperors, listed in correct succession. Could it be added later? A forgery?" Sarah suggested, though her tone betrayed her doubt. "Carbon dating would reveal such tampering," Elias replied. "And look at the continuity of the ink strokes, the consistent degradation. This was written as a single document." They worked silently for hours, assembling fragments into a coherent sequence. The text continued beyond ancient history, describing events recognizable as medieval European conflicts, the rise of Islamic caliphates, colonial expansions, all from the perspective of someone living thousands of years before these events occurred. By dawn, exhaustion clouded their judgment. Martin burst into the chamber, his expression taut with alarm. "Vehicles approaching, military grade. We have perhaps 10 minutes. They photographed the remaining fragments hurriedly, Elias working frantically to transcribe key passages. One section described technological developments with disturbing precision. Chariots without horses, birds of metal that swallow men and cross oceans, weapons that harness the fire of stars. The final intact fragment contained what appeared to be predictions for the current century. Political upheavals, climate shifts, and a specific date circled repeatedly in the margin, corresponding to just 3 months in the future. "We need to go, now," Martin insisted, already packing their equipment. Outside, the desert wind had intensified, reducing visibility. They loaded their jeep quickly, concealing their findings among ordinary archaeological samples. As they prepared to depart, the approaching vehicles became visible through the swirling sand. 3 black SUVs with government plates. "Take a different route back," Elias instructed Martin, who nodded grimly as he started the engine. They escaped just minutes before the government team arrived, taking a treacherous path through rocky terrain that their pursuers' heavier vehicles couldn't navigate. The journey back to Cairo was tense, punctuated by Sarah's observation that certain phone communications appeared compromised. At a dilapidated rest stop outside Alexandria, Elias made a critical decision. "We can't return to the museum. They'll be waiting." He distributed copies of their findings between the 3 of them. "We need to separate. Trust no one who hasn't been with us from the beginning." That night, in a nondescript hotel room paid for in cash, Elias reviewed their discoveries. The prediction date. What did it signify? The text provided astronomical references but no explicit event description. Whatever ancient knowledge had been recorded, its most crucial elements remained cryptic. A knock at his door shattered his concentration. Through the peephole, he recognized Dr. Hassan, alone and unarmed. "I know what you found at Siwa," Hassan said, as Elias cautiously admitted him. "The same thing German archaeologists discovered in 1932 and Soviet researchers in 1958, and American contractors during a classified operation in 1965. What happens to those who possess this knowledge?" Elias asked, already suspecting the answer. Hassan's expression hardened. "Nothing pleasant. The manuscript doesn't merely predict the future, Dr. Murad. It changes those who read it, their perception, their actions, their fate. You've read it yourself. Portions. Enough to understand why certain factions want it suppressed, while others want it weaponized." Hassan handed Elias a flash drive, historical records of previous discoveries, classified for decades. Every team that found these predictions ultimately self-destructed through paranoia, betrayal, or worse. As Hassan departed, Elias contemplated the implications. The manuscript's power wasn't supernatural, it was psychological. knowledge that fundamentally destabilized human certainty about time, causality, and free will. He glanced at his phone. No messages from Sarah or Martin since they'd separated. The isolation felt suddenly oppressive, as if he were being systematically cut off from allies. Dawn broke over Cairo as Elias hunched over his laptop in a different hotel room, his third relocation in as many days. The flash drive from Hassan contained classified documents spanning decades, expedition reports, personnel files, and psychological evaluations of researchers who had encountered the manuscripts. A pattern emerged from the fragmented history. The 1932 German team had discovered predictions about European political transformations that would occur throughout the 1930s and 40s. Their lead archaeologist attempted to warn authorities, only to be institutionalized. The Soviet team of 1958 uncovered prophecies regarding nuclear proliferation and space achievements. 3 members subsequently defected, while 2 committed suicide. Most disturbing were the American contractor reports from 1965. They had recovered fragments during the Abu Simbel Temple relocation project that predicted Middle Eastern conflicts with unsettling precision. Their findings were classified under national security protocols. The team scattered to different military installations where they could be monitored. Elias's phone vibrated, a message from an unknown number. Martin taken, Delacroix Hotel, room 712, come alone. S. Sarah had gone dark yesterday. This was the first contact since they'd separated. The Delacroix was an aging colonial-era establishment in the older district of Cairo. Elias approached cautiously, using service entrances and stairwells to avoid security cameras. The corridor of the 7th floor was deserted, the carpet worn thin from decades of use. Room 712's door stood slightly ajar. "Sarah," he called softly, pushing it open. The room was in disarray, papers scattered across the bed, laptop open but screen shattered. Sarah sat rigidly in a chair by the window, her back to the door. "They took Martin during the night," she said without turning. "Military intelligence according to my sources. What did they want from him? The same thing everyone wants now." She finally faced him, revealing a gaunt expression that hadn't been there days earlier. Sleeplessness had hollowed her features. The prophecies about what happens next. On the bed lay printouts of their translations, fragments assembled into chronological order. The predictions advanced through history with clinical detachment, describing technological revolutions, political collapses, and natural disasters. "I've been cross-referencing these predictions with historical records," Sarah explained, gesturing to her notes. "The manuscript doesn't just record major events, it captures specific details that no general prediction could guess." She pointed to a passage describing the Great Eastern Empire's wall of isolation crumbling, alongside an astronomical alignment that corresponded to November 1989. The Berlin Wall. "What about the current date?" Elias asked, referencing the circled prediction they'd found at Siwa. Sarah's expression tightened. "It describes the collision of powers when the bird of prey circles the ancient land. The astronomical markers indicate October 15th this year. That's 6 weeks from now. And it coincides with scheduled naval deployments in the Mediterranean, 3 major powers conducting simultaneous exercises near Egyptian waters. The implications hung between them. If previous predictions had proven accurate, what responsibility did they bear for knowledge of potential future conflicts? Should they warn authorities? Which authorities could be trusted? Elias examined the fragments more closely, noticing something he'd missed earlier. The handwriting changed subtly in the later predictions, becoming increasingly erratic, as if the writer's mental state had deteriorated. "I don't think this is foreknowledge in the mystical sense," he said slowly. "I think we're looking at the work of someone who had access to historical information from multiple periods." "That's impossible," Sarah countered. "Carbon dating confirmed the age. The material is ancient, yes. But what if the writer somehow had access to future knowledge, not through supernatural means, but through some form of historical record we don't understand?" As they debated, Elias's phone chimed, a message from Martin's number. "Not what you think. Manuscripts are historical record from future, time displacement, not prediction. Before they could process this, shouting erupted in the corridor outside. Hotel security, demanding access to rooms for an emergency inspection. "Government agents," Sarah whispered, already gathering the papers. "We need to split up again. If what Martin suggests is true, if these aren't predictions but historical records somehow sent backward in time, then someone in the past was trying to warn about specific future events," Sarah finished, "or influence them. They escaped through the service elevator, separating at the street with plans to reconnect at an abandoned archaeological storage facility outside the city. As Elias navigated Cairo's crowded streets, he couldn't shake the growing certainty that they were merely the latest actors in a drama that had been unfolding across centuries. The final fragment from Siwa replayed in his mind. The past cannot be changed. The future cannot be avoided. The warning exists only so that understanding might follow catastrophe. It wasn't a prediction. It was resignation. The abandoned storage facility stood on the outskirts of Cairo, a concrete relic from the 1970s archaeological boom. Dust-covered crates lined metal shelves, forgotten artifacts deemed insufficiently significant for museum display. Elias arrived at sunset, navigating between abandoned equipment and collapsed shelving. In the facility's rear office, he found Sarah poring over documents spread across a makeshift workstation. She'd connected a small generator to power a single lamp and laptop. "I accessed the classified database Hassan pointed us to," she said without greeting, her voice flat with exhaustion. "I found the identity of the scribe." She handed him a grainy photograph of a limestone fragment inscribed with hieratic script, alongside a personnel file labeled Restricted 1965. His name was Amenemhat, a senior scribe at the temple complex of Abu Simbel, Sarah continued. "He wasn't a priest or royalty, just a professional record keeper. According to temple inventories, he disappeared around 1250 BCE during the reign of Ramses II. "Disappeared or was removed?" Elias questioned, examining the limestone inscription. "The official record claims he was executed for blasphemy, claiming to have visions of the future, but a separate account suggests something worse." Sarah pulled up a digital scan of a papyrus fragment. This administrative text indicates he was buried alive within a sealed chamber as punishment for an unspecified crime against the temple. The implications crystallized in Elias's mind. "The chamber we found at Lake Nasser." "Exactly. But here's what's truly disturbing." She indicated the personnel file. Dr. Richard Keller, American archaeologist working as a consultant during the Abu Simbel relocation project. He assembled these same pieces in 1965, made the same connections we're making. What happened to him? Officially, he suffered a mental breakdown. Unofficially, she slid forward a medical report. He began experiencing vivid dreams about ancient Egypt, insisting he was receiving memories directly from Amenemhat. His colleagues reported increasingly erratic behavior, obsessive writing sessions where he'd produce pages of hieratic script despite having only basic training. Elias felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. Where is Keller now? Unknown. The file ends with his transfer to a military psychiatric facility in 1967. After that, no records exist. The generator sputtered briefly, causing the lamp to flicker. In that moment of semi-darkness, Elias caught his reflection in a dusty window. Haggard, unshaven, eyes hollow from days without proper sleep. He barely recognized himself. What if Keller was right? Elias mused, the thought forming as he spoke it. Not about receiving memories, but about the connection between Amenemhat and those who study his writings. Sarah tensed. "You're suggesting some form of psychological transference?" "I'm suggesting that whatever happened to Amenemhat is happening to us. The obsession, the isolation, the paranoia." He gestured to their surroundings. "Look at us, hiding in an abandoned facility, trusting no one, seeing connections that others would dismiss as impossible." "Because they are impossible," Sarah countered, though uncertainty tinged her voice. "Time doesn't work that way. Perhaps not naturally, but what if someone found a way to send information backward? Not a person, not an object, just data. knowledge encoded in a format that ancient people could comprehend and preserve. A noise outside interrupted them, the crunch of tires on gravel. Sarah immediately killed the light, plunging them into darkness. Through a dust-streaked window, they watched headlights approach the facility's entrance. "Government vehicles," Elias whispered, recognizing the distinctive profile. They gathered essential documents and retreated deeper into the storage area, navigating by phone light between towering shelves. At the building's rear, they discovered something unexpected: a partially excavated tunnel, apparently part of an ancient structure upon which the modern facility had been built. "This could lead to the old city sewers," Sarah suggested, already moving toward the opening. As they prepared to escape, Elias noticed a crate labeled ABU Symbol Relocation Personnel Effects. Inside lay a leather-bound journal with R. Keller embossed on the cover. He grabbed it instinctively before following Sarah into the tunnel. Hours later, huddled in a cheap motel room with blackout curtains drawn, Elias examined Keller's journal by flashlight. The early entries were standard archaeological notes, but they progressively deteriorated into frantic scribbles, diagrams of star positions, and repeated phrases in both English and ancient Egyptian. The final coherent entry chilled him. "I understand now. Amenemhat didn't see the future. He received it, just as I'm receiving his past. The manuscript isn't prophecy, but testimony. Whoever sent this knowledge back wanted to change something, but instead created a loop. Those who read become part of it, unable to break free from what must occur." On the journal's final page, Keller had written coordinates, the exact location where they'd found the submerged chamber at Lake Nasser. Outside their room, Cairo buzzed with unusual activity. Military vehicles patrolled streets, and international news reported escalating tensions between naval forces in the Mediterranean, exactly as the manuscript had described. "We're running out of time," Elias told Sarah, who watched him with increasing concern. "Whatever happens on October 15th, I don't think we can stop it. But we might be able to understand it." "At what cost?" she asked quietly. "Look what happened to everyone else who tried." For the first time, Elias recognized fear in her eyes, not of external threats, but of what they were becoming in their pursuit of answers. October 14th arrived with an oppressive heat that clung to Cairo like a fever. Political demonstrations had erupted across the city as international tensions escalated. From their new hiding place, a shuttered antiquities shop owned by one of Sarah's former colleagues, Elias watched military vehicles roll through streets filled with protesters. The manuscript fragments lay spread across a worn wooden table alongside Keller's journal and their collective notes. 3 weeks of clandestine research had yielded a disturbing conclusion. Every person who had extensively studied the predictions had either disappeared, died, or descended into apparent madness. "Martin made contact," Sarah announced, entering the back room with her phone gripped tightly. Her once immaculate appearance had deteriorated. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and she'd lost noticeable weight. "He's being held at a military research facility outside Alexandria. They're trying to extract information about the October 15th prediction." "Did he tell them?" "He claims he didn't have to. They already know." She placed her phone on the table, displaying a message. "Government agencies worldwide are tracking unusual naval movements. Whatever is predicted to happen tomorrow, multiple intelligence services are anticipating it." Elias turned back to the fragments. The prediction itself was frustratingly vague. "When the metal birds circle above the ancient waters, fire will bloom where no flame should exist. Those who seek power will find only destruction, repeating the cycle for another generation." "We need to warn someone," Sarah insisted, not for the first time. "If this prediction is accurate like all the others—" "Who would believe us?" Elias countered. "Our evidence consists of fragments the government has already confiscated, translations they would deny, and a story that sounds like paranoid delusion." The shop's rear door suddenly rattled, someone attempting to enter. They froze, listening as metal scraped against the lock. Then came 3 precise knocks, followed by 2 more. "It's Hassan," Sarah whispered, moving cautiously toward the door. The government liaison entered alone, his typical bureaucratic composure replaced by urgent intensity. "They're looking for you everywhere. Someone leaked information about tomorrow's prediction to international agencies. We didn't, Elias began. I know. It was Martin, under interrogation. Hassan surveyed their research spread across the table. They're taking this seriously at the highest levels. Naval vessels are being redirected. Diplomatic channels are buzzing with accusations. The prediction is happening, Sarah said, just as written thousands of years ago. Unless it's not prediction but causation, Hassan countered, removing a flash drive from his pocket. This contains classified footage from 1965. It's why I've been helping you. I needed to know if you'd reached the same conclusion my father did. Your father? Richard Keller was my father. He changed our family name after being released from psychiatric care, trying to escape what he'd learned. But he never stopped researching. Hassan placed Keller's journal beside the flash drive. This isn't his only journal, there were others. On Hassan's drive, they found grainy footage of Keller in 1965, sitting in a military interrogation room, his appearance startlingly similar to Elias's current state. Disheveled, obsessive, convinced of connections others couldn't see. The manuscripts don't predict the future, recorded Keller explained to his interrogators. They create it. By preserving this knowledge across millennia, by ensuring it would be discovered and rediscovered at precise intervals, the original sender created fixed points in time, events that become inevitable once known. As night fell over Cairo, protest chants filtered through the shop's thin walls. Elias faced the impossible choice that had confronted every researcher before him: reveal what they knew and potentially ensure the prediction's fulfillment, or destroy the knowledge and sever the chain. The manuscript must be eliminated completely, Hassan urged. Every fragment, every translation, every digital copy. The loop must be broken. Sarah's phone buzzed with an alert. Breaking. Naval confrontation developing in Mediterranean waters near Egyptian coast. Multiple nations involved. In that moment, Elias made his decision. He gathered their research materials and led them to the shop's small courtyard, where a metal trash can stood empty. Even if we destroy everything, the government still has the original fragments, Sarah argued, as Elias prepared to burn their work. They have pieces, not understanding, he replied, without proper translation, without the connections we've made. A tremendous explosion somewhere in the city interrupted him, its shockwave rattling the building's windows. Air raid sirens began to wail. It's starting, Hassan whispered. In the chaos that followed, a desperate struggle erupted between them. Hassan, determined to destroy the knowledge once and for all. Sarah, convinced the world deserved to know the truth. And Elias, caught between them, finally understanding what had driven Amenemhat, Keller, and every other researcher to the brink. As flames consumed most of their research, Elias secured a single flash drive containing essential translations. Whatever happened next, whether the predictions came to pass exactly as written or took some new form influenced by their knowledge of them, someone needed to record it, to complete the circle. The final entry in Keller's journal now made perfect sense. Knowledge isn't neutral. Once observed, it changes both observer and outcome. The manuscript doesn't tell the future. It creates it through our awareness. Our choices, thinking themselves free, are links in a chain stretching across time. Outside, Cairo burned beneath a sky filled with military aircraft. Tomorrow would come with its predicted catastrophe, and human history would continue its predetermined course until the next cycle, when the manuscripts would surface again, waiting for new minds to become entangled in their web of causality. As the flames of chaos engulfed Cairo, and the prophecies etched in ancient papyrus unfolded with merciless precision, we're left to contemplate the true nature of knowledge and its power over our lives. What would you do if confronted with information that could either save humanity or ensure its predicted downfall? Would you, like Elias, become consumed by the desperate need to understand, even as it drove you toward the same madness that claimed everyone before you? Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this archaeological nightmare isn't the prediction of future events, but the possibility that our awareness of them creates a self-fulfilling prophecy, a closed loop of cause and effect, spanning millennia. The submerged tombs of Egypt didn't just contain ancient remains, but a warning about the burden of forbidden knowledge, Once seen, it cannot be unseen. Once known, it cannot be unknown. And in that revelation lies the true horror, not mystical curses or supernatural forces, but the prison of awareness itself. If you found yourself captivated by this dark journey into archaeological terror, consider what other historical mysteries might hide similar secrets, waiting beneath the surface of our understanding. Remember to follow this channel for more explorations into history's most disturbing revelations, where what seems impossible becomes terrifyingly plausible. Leave your thoughts below, share with those who appreciate the deeper mysteries of our past, and join us next time as we continue to uncover the stories that history tried to bury.